portion of Kitab Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin, Sayyidina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. For today, we would like to continue with the week 3 lectures on the biochemistry subject. Please allow me to share the screen and you guys please stay online. If you have any issues and problem, you can just unmute and directly ask me. Otherwise, you can just remain unmuted throughout the session. If you got any question, you can use the chat box function to facilitate your questions. If I miss your question, maybe you can speak out, okay, and let me know. Okay, we have everyone on the class in the class now, so please remain unmute throughout the session. Now I'm going to share the screen, the lecture for week 3 regarding the hormones. When we talk about the hormones, okay, you need to know what are the nomenclature, how we name it, okay, any terminologies, okay, any names of the hormones is important for you to know. Thus, okay, nomenclature is a important aspect in biology, okay, in clinical science or in basic medical science, because with the name itself, you can know where are they originated from, okay, and where they are going to, okay, what are the organs involved, okay. From the name of the hormone itself, you can know what would be the functions, what would be the mechanism, okay, what would be the metabolism related, what would be the synthesis of the hormone, okay, how the body synthesizes the hormone, what would be the main components for the production or synthesis of the hormones. So as for today, we're gonna learn about the hormones, okay. What are the characteristics? How do you classify them? Is it based on the organs, okay, or is it based on the name? We also want to see about the functions of the hormones, okay. Certain hormones have the specific functions and they are being secreted at specific location. In the diagram, as I show you here, if you can see on the right hand side, you see this is the anatomy of the human. Inside the brain, we have the pineal gland that secretes melatonin. Hypothalamus secrete TRH, okay, CRH, GHRH, okay. H at the back is the hormones, but I need you to find out what are these things, okay, what are the names, okay. Dopamine, somatostatin, and vasopressin. In the pituitary gland, okay, still in the brain, there are few hormones being secreted. We have GH, TSH, ACTH, FSH, MSH, LH, prolactin, oxytocin, and vasopressin too. In the thyroid and parathyroid, we have T3 and T4 calcitonin, PTH hormones. In the what we call it, thymus, we have thymopoietin. Okay, this is the hormone secreted by the thymus. Whereas if you can see inside the liver, they have their own hormones too. Okay, this is the IGF and THPO. These are the nomenclature, okay. These are the names of the hormones. Sometimes, okay, even though it's quite difficult to find a different name for the same hormones, but we use a standardized version of the hormone names, okay. For adrenal, they are androgens, glucocorticoids, adrenalines, and noradrenalines. Okay, what are their functions? You have gone through the PBL session for today. Maybe you want to understand a bit more on these hormones, on how they regulate the fight and flight responses in human. Ovary, placenta, we have estrogen, progesterone. Well, that's in female. Whereas in the male, in the testes, we have androgens, we have estradiol, inhibin. The uterus, we have prolactin, relaxin. What else? Oxytocin. Stomach, you have gastrin, ghrelin, histamine, somatostatin, neuropeptide Y. The pancreas, this is very famous and common. She's the insulin and also the glucagon as well as the somatostatin. Kidneys also secreting hormones, calcitrol, renin, erythropoietin. In other words, the whole organs in our body functions to secrete hormones, right? So this is very important for you to know. If certain hormones being secreted by organ A, can they be inhibited by organ B, or can they be secreted and inhibited by the similar organ? What is the function of certain hormones? How do you classify them? Okay, based on the name. So today we want to unravel the properties of these hormones. We want to know a bit more further. Okay, allow me to share with you. So the objective for today's session, we need to understand the target cell concept. How do we classify the hormones? Okay, we need to address the diversity of the endocrine system. Hormones transportation, how it's been transferred from the brain to the heart, from the brain to the muscle, okay, the neurotransmitter, from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system. How is the conduction of these hormones to the target organs, specifically the cells? In this session, you will also learn the action of the hormones, the signal transduction. If the body receives the signal from the hormones, what will be the execution? What will be the effect? What will be the process that can be carried out? Whether it can be stimulating another hormones, or it can start to give some effect, or it's inhibiting the effect of the hormone. So we will look on that too. How about the metabolism? How the hormones being synthesized? And at the same time, you want to know how the hormones is being degraded, right? So the process of hormones production is a continuous process in our body. Okay, once they have satisfied a certain function, we can eliminate them, right? But in some hormones, they can keep on reproducing, okay, keep on produce, maintain in our body for a constant effect. Okay, as for today, what makes you awake? There must be some hormones that keeps you awake. Okay, maybe the functions of the melatonin is inhibited, or else you will feel asleep. Okay, you will feel very tired and you want to sleep. Okay, so we want to learn about that today. Okay, before I go further, let us go through with this short diagram. You see the hypothalamus in our brain, okay, direct control by the nervous system on the left hand side. From the brain, it can act on the adrenal gland that is situated on the kidney. So the conduction or the transportation is very far, okay, from the brain and goes to the kidney, all right, to the center of your body. But how this process is being conducted, okay, how is it possible for the transmission of the hormone from the brain to the organs, and how long does it take for certain effect to take into action, okay, to comes into action? Indirect control to the release of regulatory hormones, okay? There are many classification of hormones. they are regulatory hormones. For example, the one that has been released by the hypothalamus. Okay, we have the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Okay, after the hypothalamus, we have the anterior lobe of pituitary gland. So we call them as well. We also call them as the endocrine gland. All right. And at some point, the posterior lobe of pituitary gland has a certain effect. Okay, so from hypothalamus, it can direct a control certain, directly act on the organ. It can produce another regulatory hormones. Okay, it's step by step. Okay, in a stepwise manner. Okay, we will go to the regulatory hormones, and after that, they will secrete or will elicit the effect or the functions on that organs. Okay, it's also possible for the direct release of hormones, okay, which is being secreted directly on the kidneys or in the uterine smooth muscle or ductus deferens in the male reproductive organs. Okay, so in purple here, you can see here ACTH. These are hormones being secreted by this anterior pituitary lobe, okay, anterior pituitary gland. And after that, this regulatory hormone in the box here, it will become specific to act on certain organs. Okay, lots of hormones here. Okay, make sure you know which what are the names of this acronym. Okay, the ACTH are the adrenocorticotropic hormones. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. GH, growth hormones. PRL, prolactin. FSH, follicle stimulating hormones. LH, luteinizing hormones. These are the regulatory hormones, whereas in the green one, this is a direct release of hormones. Okay, they don't involve any nervous system. All right, only this red one directly acts on the adrenal gland for the fight and flight response, as you have learned in the PBL this morning. Okay, if you have done so. So as for introduction, the metabolic process within a given cell are frequently regulated by signal from outside of the cells. You have various, billions of cells in your body, and each of these cells can respond to the chemicals elicited by these hormones. Okay, the hormones act as a signal. They can bind to certain cells, and then the cells can execute some functions or effects. Any hormones related in the either intercellularly or intracellularly, they're being classified as the endocrine system. Anything related with the hormones, okay, with the glands that producing hormones, we include them in the endocrine system. Hormones are the Greek terminology that used to mean aroused to activity. Means they need to be waken up for a certain function or effect. In classical definition, hormone is a substance. Sometimes it's a protein. It can be a peptide. It can be polypeptide. It can be steroid. It can be lipids. So these are a different type of classifications of the hormones. It's a substance that is synthesized in one organ and transported by the circulatory system to act on another tissue. However, this description is too restrictive because hormones can act on the a neighboring cell, we call it paracrine action. Okay, if it's occurring or giving signals to the cell next to them, so we call it paracrine. And on the cell which they were synthesized, okay, this is the autocrine action. The hormone can be acting on the cells that are synthesized them, okay, and they bypass the systemic circulation. They don't want to go with the mainstream circulation, no, okay, so they will act on their own. They have their own special way to activate another cell, so we call this autocrine action. As for example, in the figure provided below, you can see the blood carries many hormones, right? Some hormones can be transported inside the bloodstream. Some hormones can be transported directly to the neighboring cells, right? So make sure you know which one is the paracrine, which one is the autocrine function. Endocrine cells, whatever it is, for example, maybe you have pancreas, okay? Why pancreas is considered as the endocrine cells? Because pancreas contain lots of glands, and inside this gland where the endocrine cells reside. The endocrine cells functions, okay, to produce insulin inside the pancreas. And in some other organs, they have their own endocrine cells. In other words, they are those cells who are making the hormones. And after that, once the hormone is being secreted, either in the bloodstream or directly to the neighboring cells, then the target cells with hormone bound to receptor. All right, you can see in the image below the target cells. On the outside, you can see lots of hormones, the blue, green, and red. All right, they bind to the receptor that is available on the outer surface of the cells. All right, so far everything good, everyone? Yes. I know some of you are struggling to come and join the class because the internet connection is not stable, okay? But just stay with me, okay? I have the slides prepared so you can have it afterwards, all right? So you just focus on the lecture. If you got any question, then you can just ask, okay? I'm more than happy to help you. So what are the hormones? Hormones are transported from the sites of their synthesis, for example, pancreas, okay? And then from pancreas, they will travel to the bloodstream and then find the target cells, okay? In terms of their chemical structure, some typical hormones are made up of steroids. Some of them made up of proteins like polypeptides. Some of them, steroid based like the estrogens, androgens, mineralocorticoids. They are all originated from the steroids. Like the insulins, which are polypeptides, they are proteins also being classified as hormones. They have lots of amino acid derivatives. And these might include the epinephrine and also norepinephrine. Okay, the function is to maintain the systemic circulation, a proper balance. They will regulate, okay, well, if you have very high blood pressure, for example, or maybe you have like very hyperglycemic condition. If you have diabetes mellitus, you will have high blood sugar content. So the pancreas need to be triggered to release the insulin into the bloodstream, and insulin will then act on the sugar through the GLUT4 transporter and take up into the cells, okay? They will clean up the bloodstream from available sugar inside the blood. Now you can reduce your blood sugar level, okay? So it can also mediate responses to external stimuli. For example, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Like Gopal, you know, Gopal is overweight. This morning you have the PBS session. He ran around about, like he ran about 200 meters just, you know, to run away from the stray dog. Okay, so now he's in very dangerous situation. He start to sweat, and this is very emergency incident. So what happened to the body? The endocrine system, the hormones will start to be released. So the name of the hormones that regulate the fight or flight response is called the epinephrine or norepinephrine. Okay, I know you know the other name of epinephrine and norepinephrine. You have to find it, right? Play roles in the growth and development too. So the hormone doesn't only, you know, maintain your blood sugar level, maintain your blood pressure, maintain your body temperature, but they can also play roles in regulating your growth and development. You are growing now, okay? You have the sex hormones where you want to get married and get babies, okay? Roles of the growth hormones and types of the hormones I have shown you just a bit just now. So we want to go a bit more detail after this. The diagram provided below is just to illustrate how hormones work. It regulates the biological process such as the muscle growth, the hunger, the heart rate, menstrual cycle, body temperature, high blood pressure. Okay, so they all requires the hormones secreting cells, and then they will start to bind, okay, the hormones that have been secreted by the endocrine cells or the secreting cells. They will bind to the receptors on target cells, and after that the target cell will decide what type of effect they want to take. Okay, whether they want to inhibit, no, I don't want to elicit any effect, I just want to receive the receptors but keep on doing nothing. Okay, just stay there. The target cell can decide, or maybe the target cell can just, you know, immediately when the hormone bound to the receptors, they want to quickly give response, right? So they have the power to decide. On the right hand side, you can see the circulating hormones. Some of them be secreted in the bloodstream. Some hormones exert their effects by binding to the cell surface receptor on the target cells. Okay, similar like the previous one. And some hormone cross the plasma membrane and act on the receptor inside the target cell. How wonderful is that? So there are various types of target cells in our body. Okay, the insulin, for example, not only bind to the glucose, it can also bind to the liver, it can also bind to the stomach. So there are various target cells. So there are lots of hormones. How you want to handle this? Okay, what happens if you have increasing a certain number of hormones and reduce a certain number of hormones? So what happened? You will have imbalance of hormone. We call it hormonal imbalance. Okay, you misregulate the hormones, so you need to have like the hormonal therapy. We need to inject you with a certain hormone if you're lacking certain hormones, and then we will make everything clear and good condition. All right, so in this diagram is showing that not only to the surface, but the hormone itself can also bind to the target cell inside, okay, the cells. Now, the slide is very busy. You see the function of hormones, the name of hormones, okay, where are the origins? Polypeptides, corticotropin releasing factor secreted by hypothalamus. The function stimulate release of ACTH. As I said, sometimes the hormones have a several cascade or stepwise manner. They have to choose step-by-step process before they give the function. All right. So this is an example from hypothalamus, the corticotropin releasing factor can stimulate the release of the ACTH. Okay, the ACTH cannot be stimulated without CRF. Okay, same goes like the gonadotropin releasing factor, right? It can stimulate the release of the FSH and LH. All right, it's important for you to spell out everything because I'm not going to spell out every time. This is important for your quiz especially and your assignment. Okay, some of the quiz might come from this slide. Okay, I want you to take attention to that. All right, tyrotropin releasing factor. The hypothalamus stimulates the release of the TSH. The growth hormone releasing factor, GRH, stimulates the release of the growth hormone. Can you see the relation? All right. For example, if it's tyrotropin releasing hormone, it can release the thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, now you know where they originated from and what organs that they can bind after this. Okay, it's originated from hypothalamus, and after the TSH being released, so the TSH will further bind to what organ? You need to know about that. Okay, is it the thyroid? Is it the parathyroid? Okay, you have to know that. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, you have the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Anterior means to the front, okay? Posterior means at the back. So the pituitary gland, you have like these two, glands, okay? Those in the front, we call it anterior pituitary. And that's the one that release the adrenocorticotropic hormones that will then stimulate the release of adrenocorticosteroid hormones. Tyrotropin, TSH, also stimulate, also being acting on the anterior pituitary that stimulate release of thyroxine. FSH, in ovaries, it stimulates ovulation, estrogen synthesis for the female. In testes, it stimulates the spermatogenesis. Luteinizing hormone in ovaries stimulate estrogen, progesterone hormones. In testes, it stimulates androgen synthesis. Methamphetamine has opioid effect on central nervous system. Okay, leuenkephalin has opioid effect on central nervous system, as well as the beta endorphin has opioid effect on central nervous system. What is opioid? Opioid is being used in the clinics, okay, in the wards to treat as a painkillers. Okay, so look, your body is already have all these things. Right? If you have something pain, like for example, you have all these hormones to regulate how severe you will feel, okay? The pain threshold that you will feel. It has the opioid effect. Vasopressin, all right? It will act on the posterior pituitary. It will later stimulate the water resorption by the kidney and also increase the blood pressure. Oxytocin, the good hormones, okay, that increase the production of the milk after delivery for pregnant lady. Okay, it also replenish or stimulates the contraction of the uterus or the uterine muscle. Insulin is secreted from where I already discussed with you just now. Let me check if we have, right? So that's origin. That's the origin. Because I cannot see on the top one. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Insulin stimulated by beta cell of islet of Langerhans in the pancreas. It stimulates the uptake of glucose from the bloodstream. It takes all the sugar from your blood and then put it back into the liver, okay, for further metabolism. Glucagon is in pancreas too, but the mechanism is other way around, okay, as opposed to the beta cells. They have this A or alpha cell of islet of Langerhans that functions to secrete glucagon. The glucagon can stimulate the release of glucose to the bloodstream. In the case of hypoglycemic, when you are deprived of glucose content, sugar content is very low, the body or the pancreas is very brilliant. They can stimulate the alpha cell, which is the endocrine cells in the pancreas, to release the glucagon, so that when you have the hypoglycemic condition, lots of sugar will be released in the bloodstream, then you will maintain your blood sugar level. All right. There are some hormones, they are coming from the steroids. You have the glucocorticoids from the adrenal cortex. All right, on the adrenal cortex, on top of the kidney, both sides. Okay, so they are the glucocorticoids. It functions to reduce inflammation and increase resistance to stress. Okay, if you want to relate with the things that happen to Gopal, again, you can imagine Gopal is very, obese person. Okay, mineralocorticoids, again, on the adrenal cortex. Okay, originated from adrenal cortex. It maintains salt and water balance. Salt and water balance is important for you. If you have very high salt content, you will lose some of your water, and then the mineralocorticoids will come into action and it will balance this out. The estrogen, gonads, and adrenal cortex estrogen, that gonads and adrenal cortex can release estrogen. It can stimulate the development of secondary sex characteristics, particularly in females. Androgens, gonads, and adrenal cortex, it will stimulate development of the secondary sex characteristics in the males. Okay, you can see the female become more, mature, and they have their own cycle for the menstrual, whereas for the androgen, for male, sorry, they have a certain features, physical features. They become more, strong alpha males. Okay, they become more hairy, for example, and the voice is now become a bit more thick. Okay, so that's one of these characteristics due to the hormones. As I said, the hormones not only regulate the growth, okay, not only regulate the the sexual characteristic, but also it mediates the functions for another activity, okay, for your homeostasis, for physiological functions. There are some amino acid derivatives, for example, the epinephrine, tyrosine, also be secreted by this system, right? The adrenal medulla, both adrenal medulla can regulate the secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine base, okay, depend on the condition, right? If you increase heart rate and blood pressure, it means that it's the effect of the epinephrine. If the peripheral circulation is decreases, or you can see the lipolysis in adipose tissue occur, it is the effect of the norepinephrine. And finally, the tyrosine will stimulate the metabolism in a general condition. Okay, as a holistic way. Thyroxine released from the thyroid organ, it can stimulate the synthesis and degradation of all types of hormones. Okay, so this is the special function of the thyroid. So far, everyone, can you hear? Is it good or not good?
Good. Good.
Yeah. Okay, can we continue?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we continue. We move on to the feedback inhibition of hormones. As I said earlier, when the hormones been secreted, okay, it depends on the target cell whether they want to give the function or they want to inhibit the activity. So the release of hormones exert control on the cells of the target organs. Other control mechanism, however, determine the workings of the endocrine gland that release the hormones. Simple feedback mechanism, we call it the negative feedback mechanism, in which the action of hormones leads to the feedback inhibition of release of the hormones. Okay, like the pancreas, if they producing the insulin, and insulin will go to the blood vessel, and after that from the blood vessel the insulin will then negatively goes back to the pancreas. All right, it can initiate the negative feedback. It can inhibit. Okay, for example, if too much hormones, like too much insulin being secreted in the bloodstream, and after that this same insulin, okay, the excessive amount of insulin that has been secreted, they will go back to the pancreas and tell, oh pancreas, stop producing insulin anymore, we have enough insulin in the body, I mean in the blood, so stop doing that. So that is what we call the simple feedback mechanism. In other way, the hormone itself is so brilliant that they can tell the organs that they are originated from to stop producing it. Okay, so that now we call it the regulation. Okay, they will maintain a good amount of hormones circulating in the body, not too high, not too low. Okay, so that's the basic idea behind it. Okay, now we move on to the hormonal control. In humans, a complex hormonal system has evolved that requires releasing factors. This is very important. Hypothalamus, this is very important. This is the main machine that controls the production of the hormones, that control the release of these hormones to the other organs. We call like some here, some of these like the trophic hormones under the control of the pituitary. Okay, so we call it trophic hormones. Releasing factors, the one that is being secreted under the control of hypothalamus. And then specific hormones for target organs under the control of endocrine gland. Now you can see stepwise manner. It is so important for you to know that the regulation of these hormones in our body has been designed in such a way that it can happen in a step-by-step process. Okay, from the hypothalamus, it can produce these all releasing factors, also a hormone, and these releasing factors, okay, RF, CRF, TRF, GNRF, GRF, so they will go and bind to the pituitary. So the pituitary gland here act as the trophic hormones. Okay, sorry, the hormones released by the pituitary gland, we call it as trophic hormones, and these include the ACTH, TSH, FSH, LH, growth hormones. That's from the anterior part. The posterior lobe of the pituitary secrete vasopressin and oxytocin. And then after that, if ACT has been secreted by anterior. It will act on the adrenal cortex, and in turn adrenal cortex will release the adrenocortical hormone. Okay, from the TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, will act on the thyroid, and then thyroid in further release the tyrosine. It can act on the muscle and liver. For the FSH and LH, it can bind to the testes or ovary and producing the sexual hormones, and then give the characteristics. The anterior pituitary can also give rise to growth hormones and directly bind to the bone as a target cells. And you can see here from the posterior pituitary, it can release the vasopressin and oxytocin that act on the water balance, that control the water balance, and also the lactation for the pregnant lady. Okay, so this is just a similar what I've shown you before. This is the hormonal control. A more sophisticated control system involves the action of hypothalamus, pituitary, and then later on the endocrine gland. So you have to know these three different steps. Okay, hypothalamus, releasing factors, pituitary, trophic factors, and endocrine gland is the one who execute the functions. Okay, the CNS, central nervous system, is on top of the hypothalamus. They are the one that control the hypothalamus whether to release the releasing hormone or not. So remember, before hypothalamus come into action, there are these CNS. The signal must come from the central nervous system to stimulate hypothalamus. Hypothalamus can then release the releasing hormone. This releasing hormone will act on the anterior pituitary, or releasing hormone can act on the posterior pituitary, and then after that they will release the trophic hormones that will act on certain organs before the effect can come into action. Okay, so to control this, it's not only one way process. Again, it has the negative feedback mechanism. There must be some way that the body cannot only release the hormone or secrete the hormones. We need to stop the hormones once we already have it, okay, at good amount, then we need to stop. To do this, a certain hormones need to come into action. For example, the inhibin can then inhibit the very high amount of FSH in the testes, for example. Okay, if they keep on stimulating the FSH, you will get a cancer, for example, you will get a certain disease. So this balance need to be controlled in our body. Okay, this is just example. Chemical natures of hormones. Okay, luckily we reached this part. The chemical natures of the hormones. You know, hormones are the chemical, obviously, because they come, you know, from in different form. Some of them are proteins, some of them are steroids, some of them are derivative of the amino acids. They are very important signal, okay, for the cells. Like you will receive the signal from your mobile phone, for example. If someone call you for good news or someone call you for a bad news, then you will act on it. Okay. For example, if someone call you happy birthday to you, then you will say thank you very much. You will be very happy, right? And you start to smile. But someone say, oh no, you didn't score that much in the PBL session. You will get low marks. And then you will start to react and get very sad. You will be upset. And that's how you respond to it. Same goes to our cells. It depends on the signal that you have, okay, that you receive, and you decide what you're gonna feel or how you're gonna respond to it. Okay, so this is the natures of the hormone. I come out with the example here, the chemical natures of hormones, which is important for the signaling transduction, or the what we call the conduction of the information, the transmission of the information to the cells. Steroid hormones, they can enter the cell directly through the plasma membrane, or they can bind to the receptors only. Okay, so there are two ways here for steroid hormones. Why? Don't ask me, right? You must know this, because steroid hormones, steroid is very large chemical structure. They cannot come into the cells. We don't have very big channel for the steroid to come in. All right, so steroid hormone is very big. They cannot enter the cell. But protein based, for example, polypeptide or amino acid, they are very small. And on the outer surface of our cell, we have a certain channel that can allow the protein to come, you know, and then they will allow a certain hormones to bind to the nucleus, for example, and then they can give function. Okay, so the protein is a type of non-steroid hormones. Okay, they enter the cells by binding to plasma membrane receptors. On the left hand side at the bottom, you can see the endocrine cells secreted by exocytosis, means exit the cells. They pinch out, okay, and then they exit the cells, and then they will be transmitted, or they will travel into the bloodstream, okay, in the form of dissolved messenger. And this is the hydrophilic messenger. Why? This type of hormones, they love the water. That's why we call it hydrophilic. They can survive in the bloodstream because most of the bloodstream contain, most of the components in the bloodstream are made up of water. So that's why they can be travel. They can be transported inside the bloodstream. In the hydrophobic messenger, or the hydrophobic type of hormones, they cannot simply go into the bloodstream. Okay, instead, they need to be properly channeled in a way that they need to bound to the carrier protein. They need some helper for them to help them to travel inside the bloodstream. If they go inside the bloodstream alone, they will be easily degraded. They cannot survive longer. Okay, so this is two types of the messenger. If I ask you in the quiz, how many type of messenger we have? Okay, maybe you can tell me this two type of hydrophobic messenger. Two type of messenger in the context of the hormones, and then you can name it. Okay, hydrophilic and hydrophobic. Hydrophobic, they don't like water, but they still need to go to the bloodstream, but they need helper. All right, just like you, maybe if you sick, maybe you can go quickly to the hospital. But how about if your family members, if they're sick, like a very old one, your mom and dad, maybe if they're old, okay, sorry for that, but maybe you want to help them, okay, maybe you want to bring them and guide them, bring them to the hospital, okay, same like this. All right, steroid hormones and non-steroid, okay, sometimes they share the similar mechanism, and some time they have a different way of action. Right, chemical natures of hormones again. This is example. On the right hand side is the hypothyroidism and also hyperthyroidism. This is the most famous endocrine disorders that happen to humans. Okay, and obviously this is related to the hormones. The releasing factors and trophic hormones, which is polypeptides, but the chemical natures of the hormones released by specific endocrine glands show greater variation. I give the example tyrosine produced by the thyroid, which is an iodinated derivative of the amino acid tyrosine, not thyroxine. Okay, be careful with this terminology. Don't get confused. Abnormally low level of thyroxine can lead to hypothyroidism. This include the lethargy and obesity, whereas increased level of thyroxine, it can lead to hyperthyroidism. Okay, don't get confused. I come up with all the examples on the right hand side. You can read further to get more information. Okay, I just give a hint here for you to go back and do some research in this. Okay, low level of iodine in the diet often lead to hypothyroidism, and an enlarged thyroid gland goiter can be treated by the addition of sodium iodide to the commercial table salt that you eat. Okay, we call it the iodized salt. Okay, this is the thyroid of just under anterior to your neck, what we call it, throat or trachea. Okay, and from the pituitary will release the thyroid stimulating hormones, which is the trophic hormone. This TSH will bind on the thyroid, and in turn the thyroid will release T3, T4, okay, thyroxine, and they will negatively act on the pituitary again. All right. Wow, the slides is very busy, really. Okay, but this is just another example for you to know. Okay, this is the example of the steroid hormones. This is the adrenal gland. Okay, on top of this of your kidney. Call it superior surface of your kidney. Superior means on top. Okay, we have the adrenal gland, which is also an endocrine gland. It can secrete lots of hormones based on the zones in it. Okay, mainly divided into cortex and medulla. As you can see in the picture, for the cortex, you can see very whitish and dispersed. But for the medulla, you can see it's a bit constricted and very thick. The staining also is very dark. That's indicate a different regions and different components that they secrete. All right. So for this each of this zone, you need to know what are the hormones that has been secreted. I will not go into this in detail for now because it's straightforward for you to look at the names or example of hormones that has been secreted. If I ask you, what are the name of hormones that has been secreted by the zona fasciculata of the adrenal gland? So you will answer, it could be cortisol, corticosterone, or cortisone. How about the zona reticularis? It functions to secrete the androgens. What's the functions of androgens? It can give the characteristic of the male. Okay, what are the example of the name for these hormones? The hydropiandrosterone. Okay, so that's the example. We have the steroid hormones. It's been produced by the adrenal cortex located on top of your kidney and also in your sex organs. The adrenocortical hormones include glucocorticoids. They will affect the carbohydrate metabolism. All right, in the body, when you eat carbohydrates, for example, maybe some fibers that rich in carbohydrates, and then it will start to be degraded or metabolized. So here the glucocorticoids come into action. They will break this carbohydrate into smaller particles or smaller subcomponents, and it's easier for the cells to metabolize them into smaller chunk, and then they can be excreted out, or they can be used by the body as a source of energy in the form of fat, for example. Maybe they can be stored into the adipose tissue in the form of fat. For example, maybe if you are in the Ramadan period, okay, when you are fasting, this stored energy we can reuse them, okay, as a source of energy, even though you didn't take the carbohydrate. Okay, the glucocorticoids also functions to regulate the inflammatory reactions. If you have any allergens come into contact with your skin, with your respiratory system, okay, with your eyes, with your nose, then this is where the glucocorticoids come into action again, and they can reduce the effect. The glucocorticoids can also reduce the stress in us, all right? Mineralocorticoids, on the other hand, it involved with the minerals, okay? Minerals inside our bloodstream. They control the excretion of water and also salt by our kidney. If the adrenal cortex does not function enough, the Addison disease come into place. For example, hypoglycemia, okay, the symptoms like hypoglycemia, very low blood glucose level, fatigue, like very weak, you are like stressful, easily, emotionally agitated, and sometimes it can lead to fatal. Okay, you can die because of this Addison's disease. This is where this is occur when your adrenal cortex does not function properly. Okay, so in this class, I would like to draw your attention to the importance of these hormones. Okay, what if we lose these hormones? What happens if the body do not secrete or synthesize these hormones? Obviously, we will die. Okay, easy answers. Okay, the opposite condition, if the adrenal cortex are excessively activated, in other case, they are hyperfunction, it can cause the production of the cancer. And this is commonly named as the Cushing syndrome. And the symptoms include hyperglycemia, water retention. You will have the edema easily, okay? And the face, like a moon face. So in the right-hand side, you can see the differences, Addison's and also Cushing syndrome. This is all related, okay? They are as opposed to the other. Okay, so this is the side-by-side comparison due to the lack of glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids in our body, especially in the adrenal cortex region. What is this? This is adrenal cortex produce some, okay. How many time left? We already 1 hour. We have 1 hour or 2 hour class today. Everyone, are you still there, or I'm just speaking alone? 2 hours, yeah. It's already 1 hour. Can we give like a 5 minutes break? Yeah. before we continue, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, we continue after this. 5 minutes, yeah? Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, everyone, welcome back. Can we start again? Is that possible? We try to finish the
Okay,
class as
doctor.
soon as possible. You can hopefully you can drink. Okay, you can relax, chillax before we begin. Okay, don't worry. You can eat if you want, but no, I mean, not really eating. In front of the camera, but you can have something in your mouth. Okay, but still concentrating and also focus on the lecture, right? Okay, let me share again the slide. If you want to continue, if you feel exhausted, you don't want to continue, just let me know, then we can change the class to another session. Let's have a look. We need to speed up a bit before we, to catch the prayer and also to catch, is it prayer already? Not yet. Oh, not yet, okay. It's okay, we have another 1 hour to go. So this slide is summarizing the chemical natures of the hormones again. As I told you, there's lots of disorders can be the consequences of the hormonal imbalances. Estrogen, you can have like a distortion or these disorders in the sexual characteristic maturations or the sexual developments of the organs itself or the the behaviors, right? The growth hormones, you can see like the gigantism is one of the clinical manifestation if this is not properly controlled, right? If it is underproduction of the growth hormone, for example, you will find that some people, very delayed development. Okay, they cannot progress to very average people's development, right? So these are all being controlled by the right amount of growth hormones in our body. Let's have a look. Hormones as the yes. Anyone want to speak out? No? No, yeah? Maybe just interference. That should be fine. Let me try to check. Okay. Keep on doing this because I cannot hide this. How to hide this, notification? Oh, you can hide this like that. Okay. Good. Let me try. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay lah. Put down here. You can try that out. Okay. When a hormone binds to its specific receptor on a where is it? Okay. When a hormone binds to its specific receptor on a target cell, it set off a chain of events in which the actual response within the cell is elicited. Okay, so there are kinds of receptors. This is kind of like a new perspective of the action for the hormones, right? The receptors for the steroid hormones tend to occur within the cell rather than as a part of the membrane. Steroid can pass through the plasma membrane, okay, but in bracket. Okay, some of them cannot travel because they're very big. Steroid receptor complexes affect the transcription of the specific genes. Now, it's involved the regulation or the transcription and translation process inside the nucleus. To that extent, you have learned in your anatomy class in week 2, the tissue and membrane. You know that certain factors or certain components, it's either nucleic acid, it's either lipids or proteins. Some enzymes, they can bind on the cellular surface and then they will start the step-by-step process before a certain compound being synthesized. In this case, when the what we call hormones start to bind to the receptor of the cell surface, you can see the G protein is activated. Okay, this is one like a new insight okay, that we want to discuss from this slide. This is the G protein. The G proteins are the proteins that channel or have been activated as the sequence as consequences of the membrane receptor and also hormone binding. And this steroid, hormone receptor complex that can later on affect the process, okay, the transcription process of certain gene. You have learned in your week 2, like tissue and membrane, what is the central dogma from the DNA. Okay, what's the process involved? Okay, the DNA being transcribed into RNA. Okay, the process from this two, like a double-stranded DNA into a single-stranded RNA. So this process, we call it as the transcription. And then from the mRNA or RNA, it can be translated into protein. Okay, this occurs in the cytoplasm. The transcription, DNA into mRNA, occur in the nucleus. Okay, the next process, mRNA to the protein, it occurs in the cytoplasm. Specifically, it occurs in the ribosomes. Okay, that is the place where the proteins has been synthesized. So what happened here, when the hormones start to bind to the surface of the cell, this information being captured by the G protein, they become immediately activated and they will bind to the adenylyl cyclase. These activated G protein, they will activate this enzyme. We call it adenylyl cyclase. What's the function of adenylyl cyclase? The adenylyl cyclase catalyze. Okay, since it's an enzyme, the functions of adenylyl cyclase catalyze the conversion of ATP to the CAMP, which is the secondary messenger in this pathway. Why? Because the CAMP is the cyclic adenomonophosphate. This is a very small group of proteins. They can act as a secondary messenger. They will bring all the information that they receive from the receptor just now, okay, through the G protein that activate the adenylyl cyclase enzyme. So now the one that capture or hold the information is now the CAMP. Okay, so what happens next? The CAMP have all the information from the hormone, okay, from the outside. So what the CAMP did was they further activate the protein kinases. This protein kinases is the circulating protein inside the plasma. What are the functions of the protein kinases? They are the enzyme that phosphorylates proteins in the cytoplasm. Why do you need to phosphorylate the protein? Why do you need to add the phosphate group to the protein? This is to activate the protein. Without the phosphate group P, okay, it's no chance that you can activate a certain enzyme. Most of the enzyme needs this phosphate group in order for them to function. All right, and later on, from the activated, okay, from inactivated protein kinase, they now will become activated, and after that they will facilitate the conversion of the fuel, okay, the ATP into ADP, and this information will further be used to again activate another type of protein. Okay, this is a very long story, so it's quite important for you to know one by one step. Okay, this is also important for your essay. in the exam, final examination or mid-semester exam, for example, or assignments, for you to know the process involved. Okay, this is not only straightforward, it involves many types of enzyme, many types of cascade. They originate from the outside, and when it comes into the cells, it's become a bit more complicated. Now, the CAMP converting the protein kinase, okay, the inactive one into the active protein kinase. The active protein kinase help the conversion of ATP to ADP. Now, they reduce the amount of phosphate group from the adenyl triphosphate ATP into adenyl diphosphate. If I'm not mistaken, is that right? Is that the short term? Okay, from ATP to the ADP, plus if you have the phosphate group added, then it will alter the cells, whether it can activate another protein or it will just stop up to that process, okay, up to that step. Okay, so now you can see from the bottom here, inactive protein goes to the activated protein. Why? Because this inactivated protein lacking the phosphate group. Now the phosphate group, okay, P, where's they come from? From where? From this ATP, right? ATP, how many phosphate group you have? 3. Triphosphate means 3. You have 3 components. Now, ADP is 2. This is 1. Okay, so 1 plus 2 means 3 here. Okay, so why this ATP being converted into smaller pieces? Because we want to activate another cascade, another process, the next process. All right, so the ATP being degraded into smaller part. Okay, this is also ATP, but 2 phosphate plus 1 phosphate. We just need 1 phosphate group to activate a protein. Okay, not this whole ADP. It's too much. The protein can decide how much phosphate group they want. In this case, they just need 1 phosphate group to become activated. So this is basically the second messenger system. All right. When I ask you what is the hormone action as a second messenger, you want to describe these whole steps, right? The binding of hormone to the receptor will trigger a change in the concentration of the second messenger, and then the second messenger brings about the changes within the context of the cell, right? So this is the things that you want to discuss later on. And this is the in detail explanation. I want you to read this one and tell me what would be your understanding behind this busy slide. This is the elaboration of what I have mentioned previously. All right, we have the G protein. When I mentioned you the G protein just now, it's actually contain a subcomponent. They have the alpha, beta, and gamma. When the hormone bind to the receptor, the G protein start to become activated. Okay, they will act on the adenylate cyclase. Okay, what happens next? You see, from the beta and gamma, it will split into the alpha GTP only, and only the alpha chain or alpha group will bind to the adenylate cyclase. In some book, they put it adenylyl cyclase. I presume it's the same components, all right? And these activated adenylyl cyclase, they convert the ATP into the CAMP plus 2 phosphate. Always there's a phosphate because phosphate is a source of energy for the cells to keep on going. After that, the next step is that the GTP-ACE enzyme of the alpha G protein slowly hydrolyze GTP to the GDP. Now they are reducing the amount of phosphate, okay? And then the G alpha, which is the GDP now, they will dissociate from the adenylyl cyclase and returns back to the GB gamma, okay? G protein, beta and gamma component, all right? So this is like the cycle, okay? Keep on repeating again and again, okay? When the hormone is binding to the receptor, right? Same thing here. The first one is about the steroid hormone, which is the CAMP as a second messenger. In this slide, the calcium also can act as a second messenger, and they can activate a certain activity in the cells. When the hormone binds, okay, to the receptor, it will activate the phospholipase C. Again, it's mediated by the G protein. Every time the hormones bound to the surface receptor, the G protein is the key player that can regulate the activation of the G protein. G protein will then activate phospholipase C. Phospholipase C will hydrolyze P2 into IP3 and DAG. What is this? All right, what is this? I never know about this terminology. You need to find out, okay? I cannot explain to you at the moment. All the description in the note section, okay? But you can ask me if you don't understand, okay? Okay, now IP3 stage, they will stimulate the release of calcium from intracellular reservoir in the ER, in the endoplasmic reticulum. A complex then formed between the calcium and the calcium binding protein, okay? We call it calmodulin. The calcium calmodulin complex now, okay? They form the calcium calmodulin complex now. Activates cytosolic protein kinase for phosphorylation of target enzyme. Okay, protein kinase. Okay, phosphorylation of protein kinase on the target enzyme can facilitate the conversion of protein into phosphoprotein. Again, they need the phosphate as a source of energy and to modify the structure of this protein. What happens next? DAG remain bound to the plasma membrane. Okay, here, DAG remain bound to the plasma membrane. It activates the membrane-bound protein kinase C in blue here. PKC is involved in the phosphorylation channel protein that controls the flow of calcium in and out of the cells. The calcium from extracellular sources can produce sustained responses even when the supply of calcium in intracellular reservoir is exhausted.
Doctor,
Okay? Yes?
may I ask,
Yes?
DAG stands for diglacyrol or not?
Delglycerol again?
DAG stands for diglacyrol or not?
Diacylglycerol, you mean?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. Let me check, yeah? Let me check. Let me confirm with you. Let me stop sharing, yeah? Thank you for asking. Let me check. Okay, so yes, who is asking just now? Who is asking just now? Who is asking just now?
Azim.
Azim, yeah, Azim, very good, Azim, correct. Okay, so the PEEP2, the PEEP2, this is a very long name. Okay, it's phosphatidyl inositol 4,5 biphosphate, PEEP2. Okay, these are all the components. All right, DAG is diacylglycerol. Okay, you're right, DAG. And the ER is the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so what else do you want to know? The IP3. IP3 is the inositol 1,4,5 triphosphate. I have the explanation here, but it's quite, I mean, I'm not sure if you can see. Can you see that?
Oh, we can see. We can see.
You can see, yeah. When you look, when I share the slide, you look down here in the note section, okay? If you want to understand more regarding the process, okay? Like I have put down here, inositol triphosphate, IP3, okay, DAG, diacylglycerol. Okay, all the ER here I put here as well, okay? So if you want more information or elaboration on that, you can just refer to that. If you don't understand, then that's fine. You can come and discuss with me. Okay, this is very interesting, and this is not as a you know, difficult as you think. Once you grab the concept how we can, you know, use the hormones or the hormones as the second messenger, you will understand the whole process. That's why I put it on the with the arrows for you to understand what's the next step you need to do to know. Okay, so this is the hormones is manipulating the calcium channel or the calcium itself in order to give a certain effect. Okay, it means that the hormone is too big, they cannot quickly give some effect. All right, in fact, they have to go through this process, very long process, to finally regulate or makes the events or the activities. Okay, so these hormones, when they are being when they are functions as the second messenger, right? We have learned about the hormones as the first messenger. It means that it can directly act on the organs, okay, in the bloodstream or in the neighboring cells or target cells. That is the hormone as the primary or first messenger. Okay, alternatively, for a more complicated version, we need to translate the information from the hormones by the cells. Okay, for some very difficult hormones regulation, maybe we need to make use of the second messenger using the G protein that is available inside our cells. So the CAMP is the first example. Now this calcium ion is another example that still you can give the activity or effect. I think finally the receptor tyrosine kinases also can act as the messenger to translate the information that the hormones have given to the cell. This receptor span the membrane of the cell and have hormone receptor on the outside and a tyrosine kinase. If you come out or if you find some aces at the back like kinases, catalases, phosphorylases, so these are all the enzymes. Okay, they are not hormones. but enzymes are the proteins. Not all hormones are proteins, because hormone can be steroid based too. Okay, but these are the enzymes. All enzymes are proteins, okay, made up of proteins. In other words, they are made from the peptides, right? It's either primary or secondary or tertiary or quaternary structure, any structure. Okay, so the final one, if you still want to translate the information that you receive, okay, from the hormones, the body have a third mechanism, okay, still classified under the second messenger. You have the tyrosine kinases receptors. The class 1 receptor, we call it the EGF receptor. The class 2 receptor, insulin receptor. The class 3 receptor, the FGF receptor. They are all different in terms of the morphology or the rearrangements of the structure, and how they can stay on the outer surface of the cells. We classified them based on the structure and the activity that they can give. For example, here, the subclasses of this receptor kinase, the best known is the most famous one is the class 2, which is the insulin receptors. These kinases are allosteric enzyme. What do we mean by allosteric? Okay, when the hormone binds to the binding region on the cell surface, it can change the shape of the compartments or the components of the tyrosine kinase or the enzyme itself. Okay, the configuration now change. Okay, from become like a line, straight line, it can be become a spindle shape. Okay, so this is based on the hormonal binding. This is how they change based on the signals they receive. And then the activated tyrosine kinase. Now, because of this activity, they have changed the shape. It means that they already activated. They can then act on the target protein, and they can cause the changes in the membranes, in the ions transport, or the transcription of certain genes in the cells or in the nucleus. Phospholipase C is one of the targets for tyrosine kinases too. Okay, this tyrosine kinase enzyme can also bind to the phospholipase C in the previous second messenger type, right? And also the insulin sensitive protein kinase that phosphorylates and activates protein phosphatase 1. I know there's lots of terminology for you today, but don't worry too much. We will have the revision for this one. Okay, for you to read through first and then come back to me whenever we are available. Okay. The target cell concept, there are about 200 types of differentiated cells in humans, and only few produce hormones, but virtually all the 75 trillion cells in humans are target of one or more of these over 50 known hormones. The concept of the target cell is a useful way of looking at the hormone action. Okay, you have the various type of hormone actions: paracrine, autocrine. Okay, this is just an explanation. I already discussed with you previously for this one. You can read through. Several factors may determine the response of the target cell to a hormones. Two general ways. Okay, as a factors, the first one as a factors that affect the concentration of the hormones of the target cell, and also as factors that affect the actual response of the target cells to the hormones. For example, the first one, if it says the determinants or factors of the concentration of the hormones at the target cells, there is either increase the rate of synthesis or secretion of certain hormone. Okay, it can reduce the proximity of the target cell to the hormone source. They can have the dilution effect. They have the dissociation constant of the hormones with a specific plasma transport protein, if any. So this is just the activity. I'm not sure, but this is not that important, but it's good for you to know that these are the main two general ways that we can determine the response of a target cells to the hormones. Okay, some hormones can quickly respond to it and increase certain amount of hormones. Some can, need to translate the information that they receive, and before decide what they're gonna do, right? So this is two general way that the hormones can act. This is the classification of the hormone based on the structure, the chemical composition, solubility, the location of the receptors, and the nature of the signals used to mediate the hormonal action within the cells. Okay, and the first box on the left, you can see the hormones that bind to intracellular receptors. Number 2, hormones that bind to cell surface receptor. When it involves the cell surface receptor, now you know that this is involving the CAMP. Okay, the CGMP. So cyclic adenosine monophosphate, CAMP. CGMP, cyclic guanosine monophosphate, if I'm not mistaken. The second messenger is a calcium or phosphatidylinositol, IP3. Just now we have mentioned this one, or in the form of the tyrosine kinase. So this is important slide for you to know. If I ask you how do we classify the hormones based on the mechanism of action, so you need to come up with the 1, okay, 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D. Okay, the first one is the that bind to intracellular receptor. We call it like a primary messenger. The number 2 is as the secondary messenger. This is an example when they've been classified based on the chemical composition, solubility, and nature of signal. Okay, similar like previously. This is the general features of hormone classes. When you want to classify them, maybe based on type, you can see this is a bit of steroid, and this is made of from the protein. The group 1 is lipophilic, means they like the lipid environment. Group 2, they hate the water. Do they require any helper? Yes. Okay, for steroid, they cannot travel alone. They need a helper. But group 2, they are hydrophilic, means they are readily what we call readily soluble inside the water or in the blood. So this is just general features of the hormone classes. So this is the explanation of it. Also the summary of the second messenger, as I mentioned to you earlier, you can have a read through. How about the diversity of the endocrine system? Male and female is obviously different based on the hormones, and you cannot say that male and female are the same. They are different creatures. Okay, some people say that the female is a very complicated machine, but the male is more simpler version. I'm not sure, but in biology we used to know that yes, okay, both are very complicated actually. Okay, they have their own ways of regulating their own hormonal balance. If we look at the structure of the hormones, there are lots of chemical diversity in building up these hormones, especially the steroid-based hormones. For example, the one derived from the cholesterol that includes glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, estrogen, progestin, So there's all very wide variety. Okay, they are very big because they have eicosanoid. If you learn in the lipid class later, the structure itself is very complicated because they have the carbon ring. Okay, they have the aromatic ring. This is very difficult to cut them or to release them, so it remains in a very stable structure, and it's quite difficult for them to pass through the cells or the plasma membrane. So this is the basic information regarding the synthesis of the hormone. For example, the testosterone, this is a type of the steroid hormones. You can see it is important. I mean, the testosterone important for making a new estradiol, okay, or in the synthesis of the hydrotestosterone, a simpler form of this testosterone. Okay, the final product is determined by the cell type and the associated set of enzymes in which the precursor exists. Okay, I give you here on the right hand side, you can have look through. Okay, don't miss this slide because this is important for you to know the structure of this hormone. You see, when we talk about the steroid base, okay, for example, the one derived from the cholesterol, like the estradiol, testosterone, cortisol, progesterone, they have more than 20 chains of these, what we call a carbon chain. Okay, they are classified under eicosanoid group, means they are very long chains, and it's quite difficult for us to metabolize them. Okay, so that's one type of hormones. The second type is tyrosine derivative. Again, you have a quite similar structure. That is where the T3, T4, norepinephrine and epinephrine are originated. They are all originated from the tyrosine derivative. Okay, tyrosine, you can Google the structure. It's a type of amino acid, right? C, you can find the hormones in the peptide form, whether like TRH, TRH, the thyroid releasing hormone. If I'm not mistaken, you have very simple. You have glutamate, you have histidine, you have what is it? Prolactin or no prolactin? Anyone? You know what's the name of the pro for amino acid? I forgot the pro one. Okay, but this is the straightforward peptides. In other version, you have the ACTH. You know, lots of combinations, around 39 of amino acids sits together to make these hormones. D, glycoproteins, you can have the alpha or beta subunits, and this is true for the human reproductive hormones. Okay, there's a different structure, different types, and of course, different diversity of the structure can give a different effect to the cells or to your body, right? Not all people are capable to derive or to make these hormones by their own. So it's important for you to take care of your health and hormonal balances before anything can happen. Okay, this is another way of understanding the process or the metabolism of this tyrosine. It's the epinephrine. Okay, from phenylalanine, how the structure, the tyrosine structure can be broken down into simpler form before it's being produced as the epinephrines. Okay, so it's a not only one way process, but it's involved a stepwise process. Hormones transportation, do we have more time? You think is it important? You think you want to finish or you want to stop up to this slide?
Oh,
Enough?
yes.
I think.
You already saturated. Finish.
Quite so.
Okay, okay. It's good to be frank with me. Don't worry too much. Because we already 2 hours, I believe we can stop right here, okay? So we'll continue this one on maybe some other time next week. Okay, so okay, good for you to know all of this thing, but maybe we can consume like less than 2 hours for this one. All right. Okay, so good. Thank you everyone for your attendance. I'm sure you want to let your class leader know whether you have time in with the attendance. All right, so next class will be not next week, but we will find some other time, because next week you will be with some other lectures. Okay, so I'm not sure what will be your topic for next week. Okay, but we need to arrange another session for completing the hormones part, because this is a very long lecture. So I think it's good if we can split it into two, so that you don't feel saturated or boring during the feel bored during the session. Any questions so far?
No question, I think.
Inshallah, no.
Inshallah, no. Inshallah, no. Okay. I thought it's inshallah, yes. Good. If you have any concern, if you're not happy, okay, if you don't understand, I'm able to give you more insight on this. If you need the slides, maybe you can ask your group members, leaders. Okay, maybe the leaders can ask me for the slides for today. And obviously, we will have some time for the quiz on my session, but we need to complete the second session first. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you later. Okay, the group section 1, 2, 3. Please decide when is the next class for the hormones. Okay, it can be next week, some other time next week, but don't change your original biochemistry lecture for week 4. Okay, so for week 4, who is teaching next week? Anyone knows? Anyone know what's the course outline or the master plan?
Next week will be Dr. Shamsul.
Aha, okay. So next week is very important for you to know. The Dr. Shamsul talk or class would be on the lipid. Okay, so you can understand a bit more when I discuss the structure of the steroid-based hormones. Let me check the master plan. Dr. Samsul, okay, is expert in the lipid one. So maybe you want to understand or to ask him more about the things. Okay, he's either in the like a hormones, but I believe that he will teach you something related with the lipid metabolism, something like that, or carbohydrate. Carbohydrate, I think is Dr. Nur Atika. Lipid metabolism 1 is Dr. Samsul. Yes, after that, lipid metabolism 2 for week 5 as well. Okay, and after that, hemoglobin synthesis and metabolism, Dr. Azmir. Okay, towards the end, you are going to understand more on the synthesis and also the broken down, okay, the degradation of these components. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll stop up to this time point. Maybe you will discuss with your group section. Only one session with me next week or towards the end of the week. If you have time, let me know as soon as possible so that I can give you maybe around 1 hour lecture to continue this hormones part. Thank you very much. I will provide the link for this recording for your future reference if you want it. Thank you very much. See you later. We close the session by recitation of Tasbih Kafar and Surah Al-Asr. Good, everyone. Bye-bye. See you
Thank you,
later.
Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
Miss you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.